All right, so first of all, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for being so full of energy. Like, I've been talking with people before the conference, and you have no idea how much it means for a speaker to be in the middle of that energy. It just sets you up for success on the scene right off the bat. But as I was saying, I have to start by making a full confession, so to say. I am by no means, although I have been building software for almost a decade and a half now, I am by no means a cloud computing expert. I am at most a user, and to be honest, a rather crappy one at that. That being said, the reason why I'm here today in front of you is because that I believe from a perspective of evolution, we are sitting on the fringe of something that is fundamentally shifting how we're going to be looking at all of this. But we're going to roll back for a second. And the reason maybe why I'm not a DevOps engineer or I'm not more familiar with CloudOps is because like 7 or 8 years ago, I had this brilliant idea of starting to put together Arch Linux for my development and gaming setup. Has anybody in the room tried to install and set up the entire setup with Arch Linux? A couple of people. Now, from all of you here, how many of you were actually successful and were still running Arch Linux 1 month later? Okay, cool. Also, when you go out there in the sun, do you feel like you're healing yourself? Damn Kryptonians. Anyway, going back to that, I wasn't one of the successful ones. Like, I've set up Arch Linux, I put everything together, and a couple of weeks into it, I went back crying to my Ubuntu USB stick, and I clung to it for dear life. And that's how it basically all dawned to me that beautiful, because Arch Linux is by any means a beautiful distribution, beautiful, complex software is not necessarily the most human software possible. Hence my discussion today about building more human-centric cloud computing. And let's talk a little bit about this community and the future. And the reason why I believe you are right now, by the simple fact that you're here, in the best place possible to shift and build the future of humanity. What does that mean? Do you remember how much, or do you have a sense of how much of an impact the aqueducts, sanitation, or electricity had on humanity? Can you raise your hand if you've read about it or you're familiar with the concepts? Right, this has shifted humanity's productivity and like wellness level by tons. I fundamentally believe that the next utility out there is going to be cloud computing. Every single person around the globe at some point is going to benefit from cloud computing just like any other utility. And this community is at the forefront building the tools and the infrastructure for it, the bottom layer. Now, cloud computing feels to me like the beginning of a spaceflight. And I'm going to share with you the fact that the only reason why I got into tech in the first place, because my mother wanted me to become a priest, it was because I freaking loved sci-fi. I loved sci-fi and the way that humanity and technology always work together to tackle the next level of big problems that you're going to have. Because honestly, technology is just one bit of our existence here on Earth, and I'm blessed to be working in it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the whole thing. Right? Now, cloud computing right now, as I was telling you, I feel is the next utility of the world. And it's brilliant, risky, exhilarating. I cannot wait to get into it. And at the same time, it's so freaking daunting. The amount of tools, the amount of configurations, the amount of things you have to understand in order to put something out there for everyone to use is really heavy. Even for us engineers in this room, I'm pretty sure you have been struggling with it to some degree or another at some point. This is a picture of, from my sister. She drew it of me like a couple of years ago. At some point, I decided to go from a very big corporations to a startup. Why? Mostly because I got bored. Things were moving slowly, and I wanted to move faster. I wanted to see the world and conquer everything. So I went over and I went to the startup, and this is me looking at my screen, and as my sister was describing it, looking as though I would punch or throw the laptop out the window. Now, any guesses at what I was looking? Huh? Close enough. I was looking at a YAML file. We were just doing this huge migrations of N services, and we were shifting around how we were building YAML files into our ecosystem. Me, a user, I have no freaking idea what was going on most of the time. But we had this C++ engine that we were using in order to scan for vulnerabilities and stuff in the startup, right? And it was a brilliant engine written by a Swedish friend of mine. And it just worked marvelous. And on top of it, we put a Rust service, and we had that service deploy with YAML files, because why not, right? So I started looking, I rebuilt the YAML file in the new spec from the people in DevOps, which knew better than me. And I put it together. This is a very, very simplified version of that, right? But the idea behind it is that there were some magic merge things that were happening in the YAML file. And my skill on that, not that great. Can you by any chance figure out what was wrong in there? Anybody noticed? Giving a second or two. Well, after a couple of minutes of just sitting and debugging with an amazing friend of mine, Alexandra from Cluj, she was looking at me and she was like, yeah, Ale, today you're not Englishing very well. Because the main mistake that I made in that file was, it wasn't collateral, but it was a world that was supposed to be a double L, and it wasn't. And I know what you're going to say. Like a lot of you in here, there are already tools that capture that figured that out, that something is wrong with it. We just didn't have them there. And it was frustrating for more than half an hour figuring out why the hell my services were not going online, although I thought I did everything right. Now, this is when I realized, and we're circling back a little bit to Arch Linux, that complex things are fun until they're not. And they're not just expensive from a perspective of understanding them mentally, but they're expensive emotionally. I can definitely tell you that after I found that bug, I did nothing for the whole day. I was like, mic drop, this is my thing, guys. I was paid enough for today, which was freaking awesome. But we move on, and in that startup, in the span of a year and a half, I did it all. And it was one of the most rewarding periods of time technically for me. From doing manual infrastructure, just writing YAML files like a machine, going into just connecting directly to production and changing things in there, because that never goes wrong. Doing manual DB migrations or scaling, because auto-scaling was not properly configured yet inside the startup. And then last but not least, watching my team and the setup that I was in go from list privilege to who God knows what privilege, right? And this was fantastic. But at some point, and not due to the YAML files, I decided I want to move on from that startup and try something new. And that's when I came over to Stripe. And suddenly, I didn't have to do it anymore, because we had an absolutely amazing infrastructure team, experienced team, that have built so many guardrails in place that I actually wasn't even able to see what was happening even if I wanted to. At the beginning, very first level, I was like, this is freaking frustrating. I just want to connect to production and see why it's not working properly. And people were looking at me and like, no, dude, we're not doing that here. And it's really cool, because we have CLI tools. We have a lot of stuff that is around you. We even have two-person confirmations for risky stuff. And I was like, okay, and what am I doing here then? But slowly and steady, I realized that what I got back was actually the creative mindset and the creative space to tackle the big problems of the company instead of messing up with production in the middle of the night. So the next immediate step that I was thinking about is, all right, so I've been doing a year and a half of superhero movies, 3 a.m. going into production, fixing things, and then being like, hell yeah, I did it. And then suddenly I didn't have to do it, and my incidents were going from like 20 a week to 1 every 2 weeks. And I was like, what the hell is happening here? Again, I finally got the chance to understand what a tax on mental complexity is. Because I was reading a really great article at some point about leadership, and they were saying that you can't keep more than 3 chains of thought in your mind at any given point. If you're more than 3 levels deep into a problem, you're probably losing the entire context of the problem. And that is what a mental complexity of having to deal with infrastructure is coming to. Now, this is not supposed to be a depressing talk, so we're working towards that. Now I want to get you a little bit back into the theme of sci-fi and the reason why I got in love with technologies so far. Arthur C. Clarke was saying it fantastically. Any sufficiently advanced technology is undistinguishable from magic. But I would go one step further and say that any sufficiently advanced piece of tooling is going to be as simple to use as a glass of water or as a knife. And that is where we and this community here has a humongous opportunity to close the gap between what it actually means to do tech infrastructure and what the rest of humanity needs overall. Also, you're going to find here some of my favorite books, so if you want to talk about them afterwards, I'm happy to do so. But again, like if we're looking, sci-fi made me fall in love with tech, but sci-fi wasn't about the machines. It wasn't about the rockets. It wasn't about how cool it is to transport and create that transponder, although it goes super much, a lot of work it goes into that, right? But actually, it was about the collaboration between human and technology and pushing those boundaries further and further of what we're capable to do. So now, as I was telling, all of this is going towards building a new future. And we're going back to utilities. We got aqueducts, and we got clean water to everyone. That was fantastic. We got sanitation, we got everybody clean, even better. Now we got electricity, and we can charge our phones at every little outlet. But the next thing is going to be compute power for every single one of us. Because we don't want the creative juices of humanity to be lost because they're not able to apply them into solving the next big problems. Now, if we are to go back a little bit, and if the technology would have moved as far as we're moving right now in cloud, because I understand the context through which we got here, we had to move fast and make available cloud computing resources to people to address problems. But what I'm saying now is that my mom doesn't need a YAML file in order to program her washing machine. Imagine on this one being like spin cycle aggressive, retries 3. She would get totally lost in it, and we would just have a pile of clothes and probably her washing it manually, because she doesn't want that mental complexity in order to deal with it. Now, the provocative thought I'm bringing today to you is that probably we shouldn't need that either. And Anja was just saying that there is a scientific thought, a scientific process to all of this. And I love your presentation, Anja, by the way, fantastic job. But like, George set me perfect for my presentation because he was talking about the future, and then I can go over and talk to you about sci-fi, right? It's the next normal step about it. But like, great scientists and engineers aren't actually the ones that are solving the hardest problems. They're brilliant in their own mind. They're doing a great job at it, and we love them for it. But the really fantastic engineers and scientists are the ones that make those solutions available for everyone else or for as many people as possible. Because that is the moment when you can allow a bunch of human creativity to just fall into the process of figuring out how to solve problems. That is the real challenge of an engineer. That is the art behind it. Now, I understand again why our industry overall evolved the way it did. Because we built some machines, we built some data centers, and we were like 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and then we moved over to assembly. And it was great. Like, everybody doing assembly was like, hell yeah, we now have assembly. And then we moved to C++, and we said, oh, assembly, we don't need assembly anymore, we need C++. Fast forward a couple of years later, we now have JavaScript. Everything is freaking JavaScript. You want to build a mobile app, it's JavaScript. You want to build a website, it's JavaScript. You want a server, it's JavaScript. The reason why all of that happened is because machines were starting to close the gap between us having to explain to them what to do and them understanding us as humans. And I believe that right now, with LLMs and AI, there is a fundamental shift, a paradigm that, as George was saying, we haven't yet processed, where we no longer have to explain ourselves like for dummies to the machines, they're actually capable of starting to understand us and understand the cues, the information that we're sending towards them. And it is beautiful because now we can start moving away from optimizing for efficiency, for redundancy, for throughput, and we can start optimizing for human experience overall. We can build empathy into systems in such a way that my mom can actually use and provision a AWS machine. And wouldn't that be cool? Like, hey, washing machine, I just want you to recognize my clothes as I put them into the washing machine, but I need a machine just for 5 minutes, right? She doesn't have to think about that. She just has to interact with that. The abstraction layer has to go higher and higher. So the provocative cloud today is that we should probably, we should already have Cloudis, right? It should be a thing. Like, when I was building that thing, that service in the startup, I could have just said it, hey, would you mind rewriting this YAML files in this new configuration? And that would have been like, Cloudis could have been like a little bit sarcastic, a little bit helpful, just the right amount. And you would be like, sure thing, I can do that for you. Do you know how to spell in English now, what you're asking for? The whole idea behind it is that technology, as it evolves, it doesn't just become smarter. It has to become kinder. It has to be next to you to understand your capacity of functioning in the real world out there. Now, it already starts. It's already starting to be here, and if you haven't checked them out so far, you can check out Pulumi. You can check out the capacity to write YAML files and templates from GitHub Copilot. And just the other day, I saw a really cool demo. You can say by the fact that I just screenshotted the kubectl AI, put it in there, from kubectl LI, where you're able to navigate through your infrastructure via natural language. So whether we like it or not, we're shifting from machine language to human language. Now, this is just the beginning. These are the first tools that are coming from the wave of AI, from the shift of understanding from machine to human. And I think that fundamentally, this community right here, we are the best place in order to make the tools and the next level happen. Now, why? Because we've had to explain to our grandparents or parents for the past 20 years what the hell are we doing in those cushy jobs are the corporations, or what is this new tool that we're building? You see, we went out of communism where we had access to nothing, and we became some of the best engineers in Europe and worldwide. Like, we constantly score up there with the US, with Canada, in best engineers. And we need to take that creativity, that scrappiness of ours, of being able to just take things together and make them look as a whole, and bring it into this space of computing, because again, this is gonna be fundamentally something that everybody is gonna use. And we have to do that by building for humans, not for systems anymore. Starting from Lovable, going to ChatGPT, going to Notion AI or Duolingo, these are not the companies that have been the most successful at tech. Well, maybe excluding ChatGPT, but they've been mostly successful at closing the gap between what a human can understand and what a machine can do. Lovable AI is by any means not groundbreaking. It's just taking an image and transforming it into a website. But they managed to do it to create the experience so easy to follow that I was talking to an O&J representative a couple of days ago, and they just jumped into it and built a website out of it. That is the kind of access to technology and access to infrastructure that we need to build in order to stay one step ahead. And I can give you one more example. A couple of weeks ago, I ran together with Amplify O&J a hackathon for independent press. And I went into there and I was like, independent press, okay, Recorder, Rise, Context, and a couple of others. And we were talking and we were like, what do you need? And I was expecting rocket ships. They were like, we need this platform with everything. But they were like, could you please take this PDF file that has been scanned by a secretary somewhere in the city hall and just do OCR on it, not in these words, so that I can actually find something in that text? fundamentally, their needs for the tools were so far behind that it was mind-blowing. They needed to be able to watch a website if something new happened on it. Do you know how they do it right now? Every single moment, a journalist goes onto that website, hits refresh, scroll, scroll, scroll. Oh, there's a new document in here. Click on the document. 45 pages document. Scroll, 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 scroll. Is there something of interest for me here? All of that. We fixed that 10 years ago, people. And they're now fighting, like independent press is fighting these upward giants and the government in misinformation, and they don't have any of those tooling available for them. So that is the reason why I think that this community, the community that is the closest to infrastructure, is capable to empower all of the people that need that access. Because every single time that you contribute to an open source project, that you're looking at solving the next problem, at figuring out how to close the gap between humanity and technology, you're actually freeing up time from other developers, from other engineers, to be able to go out there and tackle the shit ton of problem that we still have in the world. Because unfortunately or fortunately, I don't buy it when people say the developer era is ending. AI is going to be rewriting all the code. Well, good luck, AI. Who's going to explain to you what the problems are? You still need engineering thinking fundamentally to break the problem down and give it to you like a baby with a spoon. I mean, sure, 10 years, 15 years from now, we might just not give it with a spoon. We're just going to think it creatively. But at the moment, that is the reality, and it's going to be the reality for the next 5 to 10 years. So it's not that engineers are no longer going to be needed. It's just that the shift is happening in such a way that our problem-solving skills, our fundamental skills of taking something big, breaking down, and putting it together, that is what is going to be the most valuable thing probably in the world. In any case, every single time I'm building a team, including now here at Stripe, I've been with Stripe for, 6 months. Damn, time flies. Every single time I do that, it takes a while until we figure out each other. Like we figure out what can we do and what can't we do, what is the specialty of everyone, and how can we tackle big problems in such a way that we don't annoy the shit out of each other, ideally. And it slowly goes through that in order to, up to a point when I look back and I'm like, holy shit, am I proud of how this team is behaving and of how this team is building the solution to the next problem. Now, as I was putting this presentation together, I took a step back, and this is exactly what I'm trying to do with all of you here, and thought, what if we think about this as team humanity? If we're to be completely honest and look around us, we're not doing that great at the moment. I mean, sure, we've done a bunch of advancements throughout the years. We're in a way better spot than we were 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago. We no longer have to go to take shower under the rain. We actually have showers into our houses, which is really nice. But fundamentally, in the last few years, things haven't looked great for us. But access to cloud computing, access to people fighting against the system or against old thinking is exactly what might put us back into the driver's seat of creating a cool human experience in this world. Now, again, rolling back to what I was talking at the beginning, this community, this cloud computing community, is in the sweet spot of building tools and building infrastructure that is like a megaphone. Every single time you're contributing and building something, it gets used by so many people that the effect amplifies. It hugely amplifies. And I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of jobs to be done. If you're not familiar with it, I super highly recommend you to just go and search it. There are like 2 or 3 good books on it. But the idea behind it is that your neighbors downstairs doesn't want a drill in order to put a hole in the wall. They just want the hole in the wall. So if we can teleport that hole in the wall, then they're going to be extremely happy. Similarly, the independent press doesn't need OCR, to be fair. What they need is to be able to look at statements of fortune, from politicians and tell you that, hey, this guy's just got 3 million euros over the year. Probably something is shady in there, and you might want to look at it, right? That is the kind of mindset that we need in order to build the next level of tools. We don't need a better CLI. I just want to be able to sleep well at night. I don't need a better YAML file or a better configuration file. I just need to be able to deploy to production without the fear of breaking something that is fundamental. And that is what this community is building. So, my challenge today is talk to someone around you, someone new that you haven't spoken to before, and figure out some of the painful things that you have in your day-to-day life. Be it a broken CI/CD, be it that time when you did something that created an effect that you didn't expect it to create, and shift a little bit the paradigm. Don't think about how you would fix it in the Kubernetes world. Don't think about how you would fix it in the AWS world. Sorry, Andrada. Just think about it, how would I fix it from a perspective of a human being? What is the actual need that I have in order to achieve that? So you sketch something off, you put it on paper, and just think of it outside of this community. Because this community has the knowledge, but the outside world needs all of you in order to contribute with that knowledge. It doesn't have to be big. You can just build a really small thing that takes away a little bit of the pain. Like, I don't know if you can set up a proper linter so that it can tell me that I'm not good at English, but if we can do that, that's great. If we can also make that linter go away completely and never have Ale mess around with names, that's even greater. That is exactly the world that we want to get to. And then come find me around after the conference, after the talk, and either talk to me about 2049, or you can talk to me about Cloudless or your own version of Cloudless. I would love to talk about the sci-fi books if you really want to. But also, like, talk to me about how you feel this whole thing is going to go from now on. Or, you know, if we build really cool tools, that 2049 might be sooner. I'm just saying. But in the end, we are all, and you are all here in the room, in a position to make real advancement in cloud computing and bring it to humanity. So I think this is the fundamental time when we start to shift our mindset to move from building for systems and for machines and build it for humans. And with every bit of magical tool that you put out there, me and thousands, millions of people out there are going to be extremely grateful for what you built. Thank you for listening to me.